Test. Test.
Hi, Dave.
Hey,
I can hear you, Ty.
looks like a fine group there tonight.
Yeah,
Hello.
we're getting a few in here.
A few brave souls.
Yep.
Dave, can you hear me?
Yes. How we doing, Tony?
Okay.
Doing okay, but I can't hear you very well.
There tonight. Is that right? I'll turn the volume up. Does that help?
Hey, that helped a lot. We can hear you now.
Is that you, Jeff, or Tony?
Just a
I think
minute.
that was me, Tony. Anyway, you're looking good, Dave, for someone.
If I could zoom in to see you, I'd say the same.
No, that wouldn't be true.
That Eric's the sharp one tonight.
Nope. Nope.
How you doing, Jeff Wardell?
Good. How's everybody doing?
Good.
So who do we have in the conference room then?
Well, you got the mayor and Tony and Jeffrey Richens and Ty, and you've got John Wilkinson and Ernie Durant and John Cannon.
Oh, good.
And our new water gentleman,
All right.
Chad.
Great.
You're in by Ty. Yeah.
You ready to start? Can everybody hear here?
Yeah, it's coming in good.
You ready? Okay. I'll declare this meeting open. And city council meeting on April 27th. Start off, we have our work session to start off with. As we start off the work session, the first item on the agenda is discussion, procedure of annexation, and amending the annexation declaration. We've had any discussion on that so we know what direction to go. As you notice down your agenda item 3 and 4, we have some requests for utilities. We want to discuss the concept of annexation and utilities and how that concept would work. I guess to start with, if any council has any questions on that for starters. If not, I'll maybe turn it over to Gary for just a minute for him to briefly explain the procedure and process for annexation and or the process to amend an annexation declaration. And then we'll go from questions from there. So Gary, if you'd kind of briefly discuss those two concepts for us. Procedure for annexation if we were to annex something, and then the process for amending an annexation declaration.
I imagine the green light says that I'm on. Is that correct? Oh, good.
You're live.
Thumbs up from council people. All right. So first of all, annexation. I've told you before that there are a number of decisions that city council makes. And probably the most flexible decision that a city council makes is when to annex property into its boundaries and under what condition it annexes property within its boundaries. Funny, because I don't know who to face.
Yeah.
Is that way? Okay, we'll face this way. Let's see. My best side is right there. No, there we go. Okay. So annexation is the most flexible decision that you make, even more flexible than the rezone. It is a legislative decision. So and it is entirely discretionary on the part of the council. In the past, Morgan we have what's called a concurrency ordinance, and the concurrency ordinance in Morgan's code indicates that the city will provide utilities where it can provide utilities, but where it cannot provide utilities, that it will not make any approvals of a new subdivision, new site plan, whatever else. In the past, we've had some challenges with that. And so the reason we haven't had an annexation request for a long period of time probably is because we've just completed, not just, but prior to COVID, we've just completed the new sewer plant and the improvements that we've made there, which has essentially opened up a little bit of capacity in that system for new development to take place in Morgan. And so this is really the first time that we've talked about annexation since we originally, years ago, pretty much shut down all development as a result of not having enough sewer capacity. And so back in the old days, when we actually did consider annexations, we looked at a couple things. First thing we looked at was the fact that our annexation policy declaration was carefully considered by the Planning Commission and then submitted to the City Council for approval. And that's the way that it would go again if we wanted to amend that policy declaration. That declaration is simply a declaration of the area that the city is looking to in the future incorporate into the city limits. And it should undergo careful consideration by the Planning Commission and by the City Council, because the City Council and Planning Commission are going to be required to give service to those areas, whether it be sewer, water, garbage, all services of the city will be provided to those new areas that will be annexed into the city boundaries. And so when you look at the annexation policy declaration, it's like a master plan for annexation or for city growth outside of the city boundaries is what it is. And so those areas that are in the annexation policy declaration are essentially ready for, and the reason they're in there is they're ready for petitions to be filed for annexation. Annexation has its own requirements. There are requirements, things that you can't do under annexation, with annexation, and believe it or not, it's changing every single year up at the legislature. This last year, we had a lot of fun with the provision that actually I put in to try and help Davis County out, where you could actually annex off of a cherry stem in order to get service out to an area that would ultimately be annexed into the city boundaries. That provision of the code is still in the code and will be until May, and then it will change on May 7th because they took that out again. So the traditional method of annexation is a petition is, if it's within the policy declaration area, a petition for annexation is filed. The petition is filed and it needs to meet the requirements of the state code for the petition, and that is it has to include a certain members or certain ownership in land. I think it's 50%. It used to be 50. I can't tell you what it is now, but I think it's 50% of the landowners and 1/3 of the value. And I think last year they may have increased that to 100%. They've changed it for 3 years in a row. And I don't know what it's going to be as of May 7th this year. I really do not, because they changed it again this year. But anyway, there will be a requirement as to which landowners can actually annex into the city boundaries. And it is based on the value of the property and the amount of the property that is looking to be annexed. The property has to be contiguous and it cannot create any islands or peninsulas. An island is an area of incorporated area surrounded by unincorporated area. A peninsula is a long area of incorporated area surrounded by unincorporated area where the distance between the two sides of the peninsula are less than half of the perimeter. If you understood that, you're much better than I am, because I didn't understand it the first time I read. I had to draw it out, figure it out. But you can't create a peninsula, essentially, a city peninsula that's surrounded by county property. Okay, so a person begins by filing a petition. The city council has to put that petition on the agenda within 14 days after the receipt of the petition. And then that petition will either be certified or not certified by Denise, who will go to the county recorder, make sure the individuals who are filing the petition are the proper individuals to file for annexation. And once she's determined that, typically both the petition and the certification can actually be done at the same meeting. And then what happens is there's a 45-day period of time that passes before the first hearing on annexation. And there needs to be a hearing to determine whether or not the city council wants to complete the annexation. And that would happen after 45 days. During that 45-day period of time, there's usually a planning commission meeting, because if the property is not rezoned to a certain zoning, then it remains in whatever zoning it had under the county's designation. If it's unzoned, then it would just be agricultural. So usually during that period, 45-day period of time, it goes to the planning commission. Planning commission considers what zoning it wants to give the property. And after they designate the zoning, there's also, and I encourage every municipality to do this, but to put together an annexation agreement. And the annexation agreement would be developed the same time as the zoning is being processed. And all of the nice things that the city requires of a property owner to come into the city boundaries would be in that annexation agreement. And I'm just going to tell you this, that it's very flexible as to what the city asks of individuals who are outside the city who want to come into the city. Once an individual is in the city, they're protected by all of the subdivision laws, the rough proportionality, the exaction laws, the impact fee laws. All of those laws apply once you're in the city boundaries. But when you're outside the city boundaries, none of that applies. I've seen cities request all kinds of improvements in order for an individual to come into the city, on an annexation. And that is all usually spelled out in an annexation agreement. Typically, the cities don't ask for gold-plated pipe and that type of thing. What they will ask for, though, many times, and most times, is they will ask for whatever improvements that the city would require if that individual were in the city, if they were in the city. So at a very minimum, they're going to require an impact fee. They're going to require, for new development, they're going to require maybe a road be improved, maybe water lines be improved, maybe sewer lines be improved. The idea is that the city does not want to bring into its boundaries anything it will have to provide service for in the future. Otherwise, that's like putting a rock in your shoe. You put the rock in your shoe, and typically you're going to have that rock there forever. And so what you try and do is try and determine exactly what types of things you need, and you put that into an annexation agreement, and you make that a requirement of the annexation into your boundaries. Once you've got all that together, then you have a public hearing on the annexation. The annexation occurs by ordinance, and the ordinance has to be filed within 30 days after it is passed with the Lieutenant Governor's office. The Lieutenant Governor sends you back a letter along with the plat. The plat has to be filed as well. And the Lieutenant Governor sends that notification back to you that the annexation has been approved. And that is officially when the annexation or the annexed property is within the boundaries of the city. Now, can other things be going on before then? Yes. I've seen some cities that, for example, are active and want to annex a piece of property into their boundaries, allow for a development to bring in the plans for improving the roads or sewer lines or whatever else, and even to review a subdivision, to look at a subdivision prior to, if they wish to do that. So that's pretty much an overview of annexation, how it works. Now, if you're outside of the annexation policy declaration area, it's going to require one more step, and the additional step will be before you can apply and petition the city for annexation, you must amend the annexation policy declaration to include your area, your parcels of property. That would be a process that goes through the Planning Commission and then goes through to the City Council, just like a master plan change. That's exactly what it's pretty much like. Let's see. I guess my advice to you is, as you're looking at annexation, Morgan City traditionally has, if it's outside the annexation policy declaration, we have made the property owner come in and show the Planning Commission what they're planning to do, and then the council has actually decided whether or not it's even worthwhile for the individual to apply, because there have been circumstances where you're wasting your time because we didn't have enough sewer service, or you're wasting your time because we don't have pipelines out to that location. Whatever the reason is, we did not want to include those areas in a policy declaration. So rather than waste everybody's time and putting together a plat, wasting the money and putting together, those Mylars aren't inexpensive. And so the City Council gave a clear indication to Leapfrog Development's a good example as well, where you got development way outside the city boundaries and they want to apply for annexation. That Leapfrog development is not worthwhile for the city, and City Council would say, no, I'm not ready to include you in the annexation policy declaration area. But if it's logically, for example, you can see a lot of the area where you got ins and outs. If it's logically a piece of property that ought to come into the city boundaries, then it would be, it's something that the city would then say to the property owner, go ahead and make an application for expansion of that policy declaration area. Just recently, there have been some issues regarding whether or not, say you have a piece of property that is outside the city boundaries, and you have a piece of property in between you and the city, so there's not contiguity. There's been a question as to whether or not you could force people into the city boundaries. And all I'm going to say there is that, yes, there is a possibility of forcing somebody into the city boundaries. But each situation needs to be looked at on its own. There's recently a case, we put some language into the annexation section years ago that didn't seem to have any meaning until just recently in Tooele. And the language, the way the court interpreted the language, it actually interpreted it as saying 100% of the property owners within an area to be annexed have to apply, have to sign the petition. Whereas before, we'd always read that section as saying, as long as 2/3 of the property owners sign on and over half of the value of the property, that's what the standard used to be, you could actually force somebody into the city. Now, there are variations of what I just talked about that we can talk about if a certain situation comes up that calls for one of those variations. But that's what I've just given you is just an overview of annexation law in the state. And like I say, on May 7th, it may change a little bit. I know that we've got, because of the hideout fiasco, they've eliminated my provision that, that says that you can cherry stem and actually, hook in somebody that's way outside. All you got is a road connection to that individual. I think they're going to take that out on May 7th, is what I think. So there is a special provision. I've talked too much, so I should let you ask questions, but there's a special provision for those areas where the city has been providing service, which allows the city to unilaterally annex property into their boundaries. And there is a special provision where everybody agrees, including the county and the city and the property owner, where you can actually escape that an island or peninsula restriction. You can actually get out of that if the county and the city and the property owner all agree that, you know what, this is all going to be annexed eventually anyway. And so let's go ahead and allow it to be annexed now. Anyway, any questions that you might have on, I know that's a lot of information all at once, sorry, but annexation has become pretty complicated.
So Gary, I have one question, just because while we're still on the general overview, can the amendment to the declaration and the request for annexation happen at the same time?
Yes.
So, because you kind of talked about that later as a, you went through that whole process, and then just in my notes where you said the annexation agreement.
Yeah,
Would
it's-
have to, but they can be contiguous, and then the same waiting period and all that can happen at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen before the, how would that happen?
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So it needs to be within the annexation policy declaration to petition. But you could accept the petition and you could approve the annexation policy declaration expansion and accept the petition the same night. If you wanted to do that, it'd have to have gone through the planning commission first, which a petition doesn't have to go through the planning commission. So, but if it's within that policy declaration area, okay. But the policy declaration, in order to be expanded, does have to go through the planning commission. And so you'd have to plan your time period so that you got your
And then selecting a zone, of course, would
easy.
be part of that too. So,
You could even do that at the same time if you wanted to.
so
Recommendation could come,
that's a really good overview, and it sounds really cumbersome, which also,
sorry.
no, it's also why I feel like we end up extending our services without annexation, because we just want water. We just need power, right? So then our services go outside of the city boundary because of the process. Seems pretty complicated, and I think over time, everybody recognizes, yeah, you've got a bad well or whatever, let's just help somebody out. And just my own preference or my own feeling is that it should be all or none, right? You're either in the city or you're not, because then it just makes things easier in the future. And recognizing that this is a complicated process. And I don't mean I want to force my thought process, but I like to always make a decision or something that avoids future complications, that you create a new problem for another person down the road where you say, how do you untangle this? Or, I've got city services, but it's actually a county road, or I've got half of whatever. And then because you don't have that agreement, it gets messy later when you try and clean something up, who has to pay for what, right? Because you're half in and half out. So
Can I
That's
just
just
make
my-
a comment on that?
Sure.
And that is, that's one of the problems that they had in Davis County. And that is that they had too many pebbles in their shoes in Davis County. They'd allowed too many septic tanks, and no city wants septic tanks. And these new homes that were out there didn't want to connect onto the septic tanks. So you had no incentive for annexation, and you didn't have the facilities to cover what these folks needed. And so the areas are sitting out there right now with a septic tank and a lateral from the city that we made the mistake of putting in many years ago. Whereas what we should have done is we should have said, you know what, if you want to come into the city, we need 8-inch water line, we need 6-inch sewer system or sewer line, we need 15-inch storm drain line, and we need a street paved. And then we'll bring you what you need. That's what we should have done, probably in Layton for those areas. Even the new cherry stem provision, most cities that are using that still want the street, the line, and everything to be built as if you were coming into the city, because we don't want to accept anything less than what the city standard is. Otherwise, you get stuck with who has to pay it in the future? You do. And so it's not a good policy to allow things to come in. Like I say, the biggest flexibility you've got is when somebody's on the outside of the city wanting service. You lose that when you just allow a kind of duct tape type, don't quote me on that, but duct tape type fix to it. So, sorry.
With that introduction, let me try and get some things I'd like to mirroring up. What tonight we got some petitions requests for service outside the city. This is just merely a discussion so the council can look down the road and see where do we want to eventually end up as far as annexation, situation goes. Gary, I've got 2 or 3 questions if I can ask them, then we'll let the council chime in. Before annexation takes place, would the city need or reliable or this person to be able to connect to all city services? For example, they need to be able to connect to power, water, and sewer. If you annex a piece of ground, if it couldn't connect to sewer, is that okay, or do they need to be able to connect to all 3?
You asking me, Mayor?
Yes.
Sewer and water are intimately connected, is in my opinion. We never want to probably annex a home that is on septic tank. In Layton, if you don't require both sewer and water together, you're going to have a home with a septic tank, essentially, is what you're going to have forever. And issue as to whether or not it works. I can't remember whether, when you annex, if it's in a Rocky Mountain power area, your power system is governs, right? And
Yeah, it follows our boundary. So if,
follows your boundaries.
yep, so we become the provider at that point.
So
Okay.
hook up to more.
So if the sewer is not available, or would require a lift station for 2 homes, or require 1/4 mile of main line, and it's not really feasible economically to do that, can they still annex without hooking the sewers? A definite no. Annexation's got to have all utilities included.
Do anything you want because
Okay, and that's my question. Do we have leeway to adjust that, work with that?
my recommendation to you is that you're buying problems if you start annexing property and they don't have the utilities there, or you're leapfrogging way out. You're taking your utilities out. Eventually, the city boundaries are going to move further and further, and then the city's going to have to put in whatever they didn't put in. That's
Okay, another question similar to that I've got. At what point would the city require, should the city require for a new service line to be put in rather than connecting to the one that exists? Part of that question is it's okay for 2 more to hook on, but the 4th one, the capacity is not there. The 4th one has to upgrade the whole line for however long. How do you sort that out and decide, I can hook this one up and this one up, but the 4th one we can't hook up until the whole main line's upgraded? That makes sense. I'm trying to figure out how do we help answer these questions so it's not jam in the future, but allow common sense to take place now.
So kind of what the mayor's referring to is we have areas in town where we've already provided services, but not necessarily up to standards, right? Like it's like we've got a lateral and then we've got a shared lateral. It's not
Or,
water main and now,
or water capacity, if we're going off a 2-inch line and there's not enough water flow for fire protection, if we put another on that 2-inch line. So in order to get fire flow, do we make that last person upgrade the last quarter-mile of main line at their own expense, or say, no, sorry, 2 guys before you could hook on, but you can't.
the other,
Capacity's not there.
Mayor, if I could just
Go
follow up.
ahead.
Just allowed connections to existing homes in the past, not new development, right? So that might be part of that dynamic where we have a couple of proposed new developments, but they're not in the city. But if it was in the city and you have a new development, that's the point when you say, well, yeah, you've got to, you know, in order to develop this new parcel or subdivide or whatever, you've got to bring, that line isn't at capacity. So in order to add 3 more homes, you need to upsize the line from 4 inch to 6 inch or whatever, right? That's when, inside the city, that's how we handle that is during that new development process is when things get brought up to make sure that the capacity is there. And that's what we haven't done on these other connections outside the city limits. We've just been like, oh yeah, it's a 2-inch line and that'll serve, you know, as long as it'll serve one more connection, it's all on a lateral, but we've never said at what point, you know, put in a main line and upgrade the service for all the neighbors. So that's kind of where we're at.
The bottom line is, whatever you would require of somebody in the city that develops is really what you ought to require of those who are outside the city, because if you don't, the city's gonna have to pay for it, right? And if we've done it wrong in the past, we don't want to continue to do it wrong in the future. But I do know where we've had existing homes and we've connected some existing homes up because of water problems, water issues. But I remember when Como Springs came in, we were going to require essentially for them to connect up the sewer system. They would have had to run
Water, we got sewer.
on a full water line all the way out there. And yeah, you can only run 2 inches out there and that'll get enough water for you and nobody else. But we were going to require, I don't know if you remember, but we were going to require them to put in the whole system in order to get out there. Than what you require in your city, you just got to figure out how to pay for it, because quite frankly, the city's going to have to pay for it. That's the problem.
Another question, as far as right of ways or utility easements. If it's out in the county, how does that work as far as a right of way or utility easement? We don't own that easement, or do we require them to get one from the county, establish an utility easement or right of way? How does that work?
You're talking about a county road maybe for,
Yeah, basically that's what we have outside our city limits, would be county roads. So what do we do as far as right of way or utility easements?
they just have to grant the city a utility easement in
The developer would on their property or on the,
roads have utility PUEs. You're allowed to run utilities in county roads, I think, probably.
Okay.
That's their ordinance. It's not a franchise that you need, it's just a PUE.
sure.
And I had, so if you annex, does that county road, does that become a city road?
No.
No. So you'd actually have county road inside your city boundaries.
Oh, I'm sorry, are you talking about when you
You annex-
annex it
Yes,
into your city boundaries?
yes.
Yeah, usually the care of that comes to the city.
So the city would, eventually, that would become a city road, which makes sense.
Well, at that point, you wouldn't need a right of way, would you?
Yeah, would you need a right of way?
No, not if it comes into the city.
Yeah, because it's your road.
That's why annexation is just cleaner, because then everything is turned over, all the ownership is figured out, and city standards are met. So
I can't remember where we've done that, but was it down along, going out to the business park? There was a piece of road there. I know we've done that before. We've annexed a county road, part of a county road. And it became ours after and there's another issue too. I know in Layton and some of the other cities I've been in, we've actually requested that the county road be brought up to standard. Like we have one just on the southern border of Layton, Phillips Street. And we don't have to take a really bad county road. Before we annexed, we told the county we wouldn't annex until they improved the road, they upgraded the road. So we came to an agreement and they upgraded the road, and then we took over the road. We've still got one road in Layton that Boyington Road still belongs to the county because they refused to upgrade it. It's just cow path almost. And so they can't force the roads on us, but we do accept responsibility for the roads that are in good shape and that we can continue to maintain. Does that make sense, or does that make sense to everybody?
Any questions from the council? Further questions?
I have just a couple, Mayor. if I may.
Yeah, I have one or two.
Yeah, my question is, so Gary, so are you saying that, well, let me ask this question, not saying we do this, but if we're already providing a service to someone out in the county, okay? Can the city file a petition to annex? Or does it have to come from the property owner? Does that make a difference? Could the city file a petition to annex if they're already servicing a?
Okay, so if the city has been providing services to a piece of property, and services are undefined, they're maybe water, sewer, road, police, fire, which we don't provide anyway. But if a city is providing services for a year period of time, there is a provision in 10 to 418, which allows for a unilateral annexation on the part of the city. In other words, the city can allow an individual without the petition, hearing, everything else, as long as it's within the policy declaration area, we could actually allow that property to come in, and we could bring it in just by doing an ordinance on your part, a resolution, then an ordinance. A resolution saying, yes, we want this to come in. You have to have the agreement of the property owner, the county, and the city. And that's the circumstance that I was telling you about, where you could actually come in
Without going through the annexation.
without going through the petition
protocol.
process. Right.
So, and then may I ask one more question? The rezone, so is the rezone typically done at the time of the annexation? Is that when the rezone would take place?
Yes. Now, if you had that type of situation where you're unilaterally annexing it, you probably want a recommendation for the planning commission before you do that. And then on the same night that you actually pass the resolution annexing the property, you would also approve the rezone.
Because it wouldn't be obviously, it wouldn't be on the general plan or a master plan because it hasn't been
Right.
inside your city, so.
So you'd have to decide, you'd have to indicate what zone you wanted to zone it to, and change the master plan as well.
Okay.
Any other questions from council?
Gary, I have a couple. You talk about the public or the landowner input. One time you mentioned 50%, another time 2/3 would need to be in favor. Are those for different circumstances, or is that, or which one is valid?
I'd have to go back and take a look. I can't remember.
Okay.
I can't remember. They changed it. They've changed it 3 times in the last 2 years. So I'm gonna have to go
Alright.
back, and I can tell you what it is in just a second if you give me a minute.
Well, it probably isn't critical right for the moment.
It's a good question. It's a valid question. So.
But the public has an opportunity, or the landowners, we should say, or public community has an opportunity for input in this public hearing. At what point, though, is their interest, either individually or the percent of property values and so forth. At what point is that measured?
The property owner's interest? Are you talking
Yeah, I
about?
mean, yeah,
Well, the one-
if you need 2/3 of the people to say, yeah, we're willing to do it, or the other measurement is the the value of the property, the owners have, but at what point do they chime in, I guess? Do they have a vote, or how does that work?
At the time the petition is accepted. So Denise certifies the signature and says, yes, there is X number of signatures on here that are needed in order for the petition to be accepted.
I see, and that's documented with the petition then.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. The other question I've got is on our annexation declaration, these pieces, if you can see them on the screen there, they're clearly odd shapes, but and that's all been designated prior. What drives those designations? I mean, somebody's made a decision to say this is what we're looking at down the road, but what drives that? Or what has driven it, I guess, up to this point?
Yep. Yes. Ty just said it should be utilities, right? And it's what size area do you think you can service? City can service?
Anybody see the date on that? 2012,
Yeah, February 21st, 12.
adopted 2000, amended 2012. So not that that matters, but at some point, for the ability to provide services in the next likely,
I see.
place would have probably been that.
These areas that are, on the color, it's filled in blue.
Yeah, and so, like Gary said, I think a lot of that changes as capacity changes. We've upgraded the power system significantly this last year, and a couple years prior, I've upgraded the sewer system. And then some of it is probably more of a limiting factor on fire flow. Like water might be available, but not enough, on some of the hills, and then you build a new tank or get more capacity, would open up other opportunities, I think, for annexation.
So these pieces that are shaded, we've looked at ahead of time and said we can reasonably be assured that services could be provided in each of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces.
Tony did. Tony was about the only one here in 2000.
So can I just clarify too that? Yeah, that was,
Sorry.
Brigham Young probably signed off on those.
Is Tony's as old as Brigham Young?
Not quite.
But just because you accept the petition by law, if you're in the annexation declaration area, you pretty much have to accept the petition within 14 days after they file a corrected. It has to be a correct petition. It can't be a petition that's lacking. But that doesn't mean that you have to annex it in 45 days. It just simply means that you accepted the petition, you're going to look at it. And at the end of 45 days, you may say, no, it's not time. Timing is a big thing on annexation because you see some of that area is way, way out there. And if somebody's going to develop in the middle of that white space and not connect up to the city, not be contiguous to the city, then you really shouldn't be annexing that. That creates an island or peninsula.
Do counties ever take property from cities or annex? I won't say take, maybe that's a bad word, but annex, the reverse of what we're doing.
Yeah. That was actually, interestingly enough, that's what happened before I actually came here to Morgan. I was representing Bluffdale, and in Bluffdale City, they had a 1 acre lot, minimum lot size.
Mhm.
And they had a large area out to the west. I mean, hundreds of acres that was in the incorporated area of Bluffdale City, but the city did not allow for less than a 1 acre lot. And that entire area petitioned to de-annex from the city. And there was a great big de-annexation fight. And they de-annexed from the city with the county's blessing. and they annexed to Harriman that let them build homes on 10,000 square foot lots.
Mhm.
And so today Harriman's twice the size of, many times the size of Bluffdale, mainly because of that de-annexation.
Okay.
And there's a whole process for that. So,
In my previous city, that also happened, where a gentleman bought the side of a mountain and got himself de-annexed. And when I was leaving, he was petitioning to be annexed because he was tired of hauling water. So changed his thought process.
Any further questions for Gary on that item?
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, any further questions from the council?
Hey, I got one. This is
Okay.
Eric. In our packets on page 5 is the Morgan City General Plan that was dated October 12th or October 12th, 1999, and then it was amended on the 21st of 2012. You got that one? Packet number 5, it was the colored one. Or am I looking at the wrong thing here?
You're fine, it's there, it's a zoning.
Yeah,
I-
that
I
zoning
see.
map.
I sent you the general plan map. It was with that declaration map.
Yes, correct. I got the wrong one.
No, it's in the packet.
Sorry, I just had to open it before I can share it.
Okay.
So
It appears to me that this map on page 5 of the packet pretty much coincides with the that pretty much coincides with the annex plan there on page 4. Is that correct?
Yes, the area has already been designated as a zone. When and if we do annex, and we may or may not want to change that designated zone, but it currently has been given a designated zone.
So it appears that they've already thought about this and we've already zoned it, right? Right there, whoever's, I think that's Ty scrolling, aren't you?
yep,
That piece there, there's the piece that we're talking potentially about tonight over there for Ernie Durant,
There, right,
right there, correct?
yes,
And then down, I believe where John's looking at is that green right in there, correct?
yep.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make double sure that that was kind of coordinated there, that we already had that zoned in there. I just find that, anyway. That's about all I got.
Okay, Jeffrey. Any questions?
No, mine was answered on the annex, so I'm good.
Okay, this was basically just to help the council and our guests this evening kind of look at and see what annexation is or isn't, if they should want to do that or not. It wasn't suggested it has to happen, just so we had the knowledge of knowing what to do to proceed. Item number 2 was basically just discussion in connection to water, water services, collection of impact fees, so forth. And I think, Gary, part of the answer to that is when someone comes in the city and requests services, water, sewer, whatever that might be, then there could be an appropriate fee assigned to that utility request. I think that's all item 2 is asking about. Is that correct, Gary?
yes.
If and when the city said, yes, we will, that we will extend city services, sewer, water, then there could be an appropriate fee, such as impact fee or a fee for that service to that utility could be assessed at that point. That's correct.
You're talking about if you annex
Or if we didn't, either way.
and charge a comparable fee to what you charge in the city if you could facilities that you would require in the city.
Okay. Now that would seem appropriate and correct. That's all that item was. Okay, let's move to item. We have about 10 minutes before we need to start our 6 o'clock general session. If we're not finished with this, we can take a recess and still discuss this further. I don't want to cut discussion short, I want to just introduce these next two topics, item number 3 and 4. We have a petition request to connect to city water services. One by Mr. Cannon, one by Mr. Durant, to connect to city water services and or sewer, depending on which one we're talking about. The annexation concept just came up because in some discussions that was discussed, whether it would be appropriate to annex, yes or no. And so that was why it was brought up, just to see if that's a possibility. And let's take a look at the ramifications of what that annexation may or may not be if that choice was made. Let's take a look at, I guess, item number 3. John would, and again, and that's the time, I don't want to cut this short, but just the understanding is if we go past 6, we'll need to take a recess from the work session and come back into work session after our general session. But John, would you take a minute and explain what well, one more thing, I guess another question first. Gary, help clarify this for me. Legality wise, if someone is official has filed a full petition, then we have to act on that within a certain period of time, either to approve or deny. Or deny it. And we have to have that choice to do if somebody officially petitions with a full petition. Is that correct? So I guess the reason I mentioned that, I don't know if as a discussion tonight, I don't know as we're prepared to either accept or reject. I think I'd rather have the discussion tonight, have a formal petition come later. If that makes sense, that's okay. So we have more information available, rather than officially accepting or denying since it's a discussion item. Okay, with that, Mr. Cannon, would you take a few minutes to present your thoughts, your ideas, what you'd like to present?
So we basically have petitioned the city to connect to the city water system on a small residential property that we're considering building several homes on. And if you look at the map, we're currently within the annexation declaration for the city. Currently, the city water line runs through our property and services a home kind of in the middle of our project. So our project works with wells and septic tanks currently, and it meets county specifications. But we don't think it makes a lot of sense to drill more wells when the city water line runs right through there. We're not opposed to updating that line for future development down to the end of our, down to the end of our project. But we just think rather than where there's a high probability that someday that will be annexed and the project across the street from us will bring the other services in, we'd like to petition at this time to upgrade the water line and connect those 2 homes onto the water home. There's a potential for 3 homes there, but we have not, worked out all the details on that. But for sure, we know we'd like to build 2 homes there. So the problem we have is we have to move the city's water line because it was run right across through the property. So we're gonna have to move the water line out that services the existing home anyway. And while we're doing that, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for us not to update that line, put the line in properly, put the easements in properly, and get that set up for future development down the road. And from a public policy perspective, I just don't really think it's a great idea for us to drill a bunch of extra wells and where we're right there anyway, And so that's our petition, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
John, what would your consideration be for sewer?
Currently, we're currently going to put septic tanks in. We would love to connect to the sewer, but as of right now, we're uphill to the city sewer, and wouldn't make any sense to pump it uphill for a couple homes. But when the future development does go in, the sewer could gravity feed out of our project down past, the Rock Church and into that lateral and then on down.
Maybe just talk briefly about a future development. What's being looked at there?
So basically, right here where your pointer is, it's my understanding that the owners of the land here, right there, and then all the way over to the green line there, have interest in annexing and then potentially future developing that property. But that isn't our project, so.
Right. Okay. And that would be how many homes would you think? What could they put on there?
Well, I don't know. That'd be a pretty big project. That'd be a pretty big.
A subdivision. Yeah.
Yeah, so the difference is John's project's right here on this side of the street, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Water works, except sewer would actually not work until sewer had an opportunity to come this direction
Okay.
and feed down
That's correct.
300 west. And so, without creating an easement or anything like that, it doesn't make sense to do a sewer line until this develops, right? So that there's a connection here in State Street. And so it's kind of a, chicken or egg
The other
question, I
issue
guess.
with our project, just really quick, is it's not, for those of you who are familiar with that, that's Ivan Carter's old property. And it's one of kind of our cleanup projects, trying to get that area kind of cleaned up and looking better there. And it's not Pandora's box. It doesn't, like, by extending that water line and fixing that water line, it doesn't open up a whole area for a ton of development. I mean, really, there's only a very few number of homes that can even fit there. And with the hillside. So it's not like you're setting a precedence that would bring in, another 30, 50 homes or open up for some, big future development on that side hill there.
Any further questions for John? Okay, so basically what we've got here tonight, we need to look this, consider it, and think about. Mr. Cannon's asking for the opportunity to develop that property with, at this point, a couple of homes. Would like to hook on the water. As I heard the discussion, would redo the main line. The size need to be, get out in what would become a right of way rather than through the middle of properties. And so the question the council needs to think about and discuss and ponder on is accepting that concept, that petition for extension of water, or do you want to try and annex it first in addition to or afterwards? Gary kind of talked tonight, the city can go ahead and annex an area with participation of the owners. Maybe a faster process, as I heard it, rather than the owners themselves petitioning that. That's the pieces for discussion tonight, pieces to think about. Any questions on that?
So John, you're saying that no matter what, you couldn't tie onto the city sewer right now because of the gravity slip
Yeah,
wall?
we can't get into the,
But
we'd have to have some kind of a lift station.
But eventually, if that property developed, eventually you could gravity feed into the sewer system.
Yeah, if the property across the highway was ever developed, it would gravity feed right into that. And so,
And I'm not suggesting this, but Gary, just a quick question. Could you enter into some sort of an agreement when, and if that happened, that would be mandatory that they hook onto the sewer?
I can't hear Gary's response.
Hello here. Okay. Are you there?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can now.
Okay, so in the back of my mind, I think there's a 300-foot requirement anyway. The health department has a 300-foot requirement that if they come within 300 feet, they have to hook on to sanitary sewer. So if a sewer line is brought up there, they would have to do that. Some type of an agreement would be good that was recorded with the land, if you were going to allow this type of connection, you know, that you could record with the land. I think probably the important thing is the city probably needs to come up with a policy that it will follow rather than looking at each one of these on a one-on-one basis. Because if you allow one here, the next one that comes in and says, well, you allowed it over there, you're already getting that actually. You know, you allowed it over there, why don't you allow it over here? And so I think it would be good just to decide what the policy is, you know, as far as connecting on. When are you gonna allow it, when you're not, and then you relieve from any of this, you know, the pressure with one off here and one off there.
Gary, can we extend this work session or 10 minutes and go 10 minutes past the time where the general session is supposed to start?
Yeah, it was supposed to start at 5.
At 6. It's 6 o'clock, 6:01 now.
Oh, there it is right there. You could extend it if you wanted to.
Okay. I would like to do that and let you know, Mr. Duran, Mr. Wilson take, you know, some time to explain their project. So we've got the 2 projects in mind, so we can go for. So Mr. Duran and or Mr. Wilson, would you explain your project for us, please? Rather call Ernie.
Okay, so basically this parcel of property, I guess it's also in future annexation. When I approached the Wilkinsons and they agreed to sell me a lot or two, we knew there were a few issues, so we started looking into it. And I approached I went to the county and talked to them about it because it's just over the city property line, right? And they recommended that if you're within X number of feet of the city services, that when you went to get a building, when you went to get a permit from the county, that they're going to suggest that you hook onto those services. So they sent me down to talk with the Weber Morgan Health Department. So I went down and talked to them and they verified what, I forget the county county planner's name. So I went down and talked to Weber Morgan, and that's what they told me. And so when they came back, they told me to put together a petition to see what could be done. This parcel of property was zoned back in 1990, put in a 5-lot subdivision, but it's in the county. And at that time, they were put in 1-acre lots, which I assume was legal because it's on the plot map. But now the county says if you got to drill a well and you need 1.5 acres. Well, the water was right across the street, and the sewer is, you know, for lot number 2, it's only, you know, it's a little over 100 feet away. For lot number 3, it'd be 170 feet away. So initially I thought, well, you could build a home on there on the 1 acre and hook up to if you could hook up to the water, and maybe you could still do the sewer. But if the sewer is only that far away, then, so that's, you know, that's kind of, I was kind of following recommendations to file this petition to hook up to the sewer and water.
Ernie, I think it's 500 feet. So the Weber County, Weber Morgan Health Department, if you're within 500 feet of the sewer, they require you to hook into that sewer, or they want you to.
Yeah.
So I think you're really well within that.
I know that there are 5 lots together here, and so it makes things a little different. They just wanted to sell a couple of lots. They don't want to mess with the view across the street from Stu and Dan. They don't want anything there.
But once who's to say, what's going to happen? I don't know. You never know next year. So anyway, that's what I was coming to see if it was possible to hook into the water or the sewer as well.
Can I add a little bit of history here? Years ago, the city came to us and said, we're going to put a new reservoir in. We want to, because of the location and the height, the elevation, we want to put it on your property. And so we agreed to that. One of the stipulations were that the city at that time would provide water to our shop and the homes at that time for letting them put the reservoir in there. And that was the deal. At the time for power, we were on Utah Power and Light. Then when the city started talking about the new system of water, they came to us and said, we read this agreement, and the way the agreement reads, we provide that water to you for free. And that's not fair. So I agreed with them, we'll pay the city's water fee for this water, just like we were in the city. We'll just pay whatever the fee is and it'll all be good. So that's how the water actually got up there, is to our shop and the homes and the lots actually were there. But that's how the water got there. And then when you put the new substation in over by the high school, the city came to us and said, we would like you to sign up to get power to make the loop around your shop and your things. However, there's a cost, which we paid the cost to put that loop. That's how we got on the city power in that area as well. When we talked about the sewer, when we upgrade or rebuild our shop, but at the time, I don't think it had gone far enough up the road. It was too small. It was clear down the road from there. So we never did hook to the sewer. But that's how we ended up with city power and city water, is through agreements with the city back then. And now I understand that sewer line goes down the Como Road. Is that true?
I think it does, John.
Which is adjacent to the backside of all these lots.
Mhm.
At some point, we've got to make a decision on all of the lots, no doubt, but maybe annexation is the way. They can always not build on them.
Yeah, that would be my comment on this one, is to just treat this as an entire subdivision instead of a parcel, right? So you either annex or you don't, but you either provide services, you don't, to the end of the development. So each one of those lots in the future has the same, right? There adds value to each lot, but then you don't have a leapfrog in
Right.
one lot versus two lot, and then who pays for the extension on lot 3 when everybody went past lot 1 and they didn't pay anything, right? So however that request goes, I would just say where it's all under one ownership and it's been subdivided, and it seems to make sense as a city subdivision as 1 acre lots, right? If it doesn't work in the county anymore. So.
John, are one of those lots Terry Lawrence's?
Is whose?
It's right.
Terry
next to-
Lawrence?
Terry Lawrence.
It
right
is Terry
next to-
Lawrence.
It's pass number 5.
Oh, his is past number 5. Okay. All right.
And again, that was an existing one that we serviced off of a 2-inch line. It wasn't new development, and therefore we didn't upgrade the entire line to a main line like should be done at this point, I think.
He was
Mayor,
originally
may-
on the Como Spring.
Yeah.
Tapped into the original 2 inches, I understand it.
Yes, John.
Just one question.
Sure.
So I brought this up earlier. So where we're providing a service to that area at this time, you said there was a provision that you could annex. I forget the term that you used.
Unilaterally.
Unilaterally. Would this situation qualify?
Is there a big enough line to qualify?
There's a 10-inch water line.
And it was, there is. Mhm.
Extend the sewer.
So their shop sits here in the old water tank. That gets you put in all of these up behind the shop. You know, when they put the new one in over here, they eliminate that.
Okay.
But that's the other,
The other,
that's what we're talking about right there.
That
the other
might be
thing
certain.
about this subdivision is there's no other owner in between
There's not.
that and the subdivision. Kind of, that's John's challenge is there's some other people that may or may not agree for annexation, but this one doesn't have that. And frankly, I agree with the idea of annexation because the city boundary actually is on this side of the street up to a certain point. I don't know where our,
It's on the driveway to our shop.
so it's clear up to here. Yeah,
It goes clear. Stan Stewart's in the city.
right.
So he would get enhanced police protection. I wouldn't on the other side.
That's right. You'd be on your own, buddy.
Yes,
Right
sir.
on.
The only real negative I think about annexation, because we've already, been down this road, is inheriting a county road.
Yep.
So at some point, there's good pavement, right, on 100 South, and then
To tell you the truth,
what's that? No, I'm,
we chipped from the city line
oh,
up past our shop and houses to improve the road. We already did that
Yeah.
years ago.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you did.
I don't know at what point, I can always just tell when I'm on a county road versus
Yeah.
city. Maybe it's up here past these homes, but,
Yeah, when you get around the corner, it does.
and if there's a annexation request, it probably wouldn't hurt to just see, what else makes sense, and then you get full services and maintenance and everything, so.
So the answer to Tony's question is yes, it looks like it would fit into the unilateral annexation provisions of 418. Once again, they're changing on May 7th, so I'm not, yeah, I'll have to take a look at them and make sure, but is that if that doesn't work, if they do change that, you can do it with a petition as long as you get the signature of the county, the landowners and the city. And you all agree that this is an unincorporated. But, yeah, but that's the way you can unilaterally annex, is to those areas that are peninsulas and islands.
Well, and that piece would probably include the Lawrence property, I would expect.
It looks like it does it?
Yeah, for the annexation.
It's the very next law.
Next slide. up.
But the declaration doesn't.
You say it does not?
I don't think the declaration includes the annexation declaration.
It would just go up to lot 5?
Don't know without actually engineering it
Yeah.
and surveying it.
Yeah.
Okay. John and Ernie, what's your thought on annexation? You okay with that rather than not?
I think it's the way to go.
Okay.
They don't need to develop or build on those lots if they want to leave them open, but I think it needs to be, in my opinion, and I'll talk with them, but I think it needs to be annexed so that down the road,
And if we can do that unilateral way, that's a quicker and easier, less cumbersome way. If you and Ernie are okay with that concept, that's a much quicker way to do it.
we're good with that.
Certainly clean it up.
You already are. Ours there. So it'd just be a matter of extending the sewer, doing the annexation piece, and potentially at some point extending the water line up to that last lot or last couple of lots if need be at some point.
It goes to there.
It goes, the 10 inches goes to where the road goes in the shop, I think on that corner. That's right there's all the 10 inch goes. So the last two lots, I don't know how many you serve off 2-inch line, maybe you can still service those 3 homes off 2-inch. You just have to have an engineer look at that and see if we need to, at some point, increase the size of that line for lot 4 and 5 at some point.
Which. can do.
Okay. Questions?
Map compared to this, are we talking annexing just the north, I guess, side of the road, or Dan and Stu's houses, shop? Looking at the annexation map, it's covering both sides of the road. We can pick and choose how much of that light blue we want to annex, or they want to annex, we allow in. It's not all or nothing with that blue.
Because that goes
Correct.
down into Como, actually.
Clear down over the
Goes
Como
Clear
Road.
down into Como Springs.
And that's what it's zoned.
A color. You want Como in the city?
Okay.
Make something happen. Zone the public facility.
Okay. What I would suggest, the council, give me an order head up, I suggest at this point we have Mr. Cannon and then also Mr. Dunn and Mr. Wilson. Let's have a meeting in the city, come in and discuss their next steps with Ty and or with staff. Determine the next step as far as an official request, official completed petition, thank you for the word, and or discuss the concept of what kinds of things would need to be put in, what kinds of things would you want as far as annexation. They may be different. But in this time, I'd suggest we do that. That seems doable. Mr. Cannon, Mr. Durant, Mr. Wilson, we meet with Ty and us to come up, or Ty and staff, and then outline in more detail the kinds of steps. And then we'll go from there. If that makes, John, you okay with that? Okay. I appreciate the demeanor of you gentlemen. Appreciate your approach, appreciate your willingness to want to do what's right. To me, that's an impressive piece. And I think you're willing to do that. I appreciate that and thank you for that. I'd like to recess this meeting and go into a regular session. The reason for recess, I'd like to give you some time to think about, come back in to see if you have any thoughts on general annexation direction for Ty and staff. If you have any general direction on that or further procedure for these kinds of situations. Okay, that makes sense. Anybody contrary to that concept? Okay, I entertain a motion to recess the work session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, made by David, second by Tony, that we recess the work session. Is there any discussion on the motion to recess? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. Thumbs up by those on Zoom. Okay, Tony. Okay, motion passed. We're now in recess. Well, you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to leave, whatever you'd like to do. We'll now move into a regular general session. The general session. Again, welcome. Glad to have you be here. We'd like to start this general session. Ty, can you share the flag? We'd like to start general session. We'll have Jeff lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Tony will give us an opening ceremony. So Ty, can you share that flag? Here we go. Okay, Jeff, you lead us.
Yeah, everybody stand, take the pledge. I don't have a flag yet. Okay, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, as we commence this city council meeting this evening, we wish to take this opportunity which we have to express our thanks and gratitude unto thee for all of the many blessings that thou hast bestowed upon us. We're grateful, Father, for the opportunity which we have of living and raising families and being part of this community, and for the blessings of freedom and choice which we enjoy. And we're thankful for the beauty that surrounds us in this community. Grateful, Father, for the moisture that we received recently, and And we pray that we might be able to be blessed with more, that we might have adequate water for our needs this summer. And again, grateful for those the moisture which thou has blessed us with in the last week or so. Father, we ask that thou might bless us as we conduct the business of the city this evening, that we might always have thy spirit to be with us, to guide and direct us, to help us with decisions which we are faced with. Help us, Father, that we might always act in a responsible manner, that we might show civility to one another and to those which we serve. Help us, Father, that we might be able to make decisions which would be for the benefit of our community and for those citizens who live in our city, and that we might always be guided and directed by thee. Grateful, Father, for those who have served our country and who have ensured our freedoms and blessed us with our freedoms. We're thankful for them, and particularly those who have given their ultimate sacrifice. We're grateful for them, and please bless those who are currently serving, that thou might protect and watch over them as they serve our country. Again, Father, grateful for all those things which thou has blessed us with and continues to bless us with. We pray also, Father, that this pandemic which has swept across our community and our nation and the world, that it soon might come to an end, that we might be able to eradicate this pandemic, and that all will be well again. Again, we're grateful for those things which we have, and we say these things in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to thank Jeff and thank Tony for that. Consent agenda, and take a look at the city electronic meeting minutes and the warrants. I'll entertain a motion as soon as you're ready.
Mayor, I've reviewed the warrants and minutes and move to approve the city council electronic meeting minutes of April 13th. And the warrants dated 4/10 through 4/23 of 21.
I'll second that.
A motion by David and second by Eric that we pass city council electronic meeting minutes on April 13th and one set of warrants 4/10 to 4/27. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Mayor,
Tony?
assume that the Diamond Tree Experts, the $11,300, that's for the grinder that's been down at the transfer station. Is that correct, Ty?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. We still have quite a bit of material down there, Ty.
Yeah, we have a huge pile.
Okay.
Any other questions on motion or discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. I can't see those out there, so I'll call for roll call vote. Tony? Jeffrey? Jeff?
Aye.
Eric?
Aye.
And David?
Aye.
Okay, motion passed unanimously. Appreciate that. Now proceed. Welcome, Miss Child. We're glad you're here. It's your turn now. If you could unmute yourself, appreciate you being here. Miss Child, I understand, is representing the Morgan High School cheerleaders, and we'll let her discuss what she'd like to present to us tonight. So thank you and proceed.
Hi, I'm Samantha Child, and I'm representing the Morgan High cheer team. Every year we do flags for 6 different holidays. In years past, the city has requested 6 flags. They placed 2 at the North Cemetery, 2 at the South Cemetery entrance, and then 1 at Riverside Park and 1 in the city building. We're hoping to provide the service and anything else you'd like to add, once again, for Morgan City. Thank you.
There's a packet or page in your packet that indicates those. Thank you, Samantha. We'll discuss it for just a minute and ask some questions. So stay with us. In your packet, it shows 6 flags, and Samantha indicated location of those. And then indicated on your packet, talking about $30 per flag. It gives some potential listed dates there. Couple forms for discussion with the council. It talks about June 3rd, which is kind of in red. And the reason for that, I believe is, if Samantha is correct, is that's Saturday and there's a community event scheduled for July 3rd, since the 4th was Sunday. So I guess my thought would be to consider the 3rd rather than the 4th, which your paper shows. And that'd be one potential clarification. Any other clarifications that the council sees from the list given? Memorial Day, Flag Day, Independence Day, Pioneer Day, Labor Day, and Veterans Day. Any other clarifications or questions for Samantha, or a different location you'd like to see one put?
Tell us again where the locations are. I apologize.
They are at the North Cemetery and South Cemetery entrance, and then one at Riverside Park, and the other one's at the city building.
So thoughts from the council on location change and or holiday change? Or if you're ready, you can make a motion. Yeah, ready for motion as well.
I'm just gonna,
Leaders, I think it makes a great addition to the whole community in yards and letting the city participate with that. You do a great service for all of us to remind us on those holidays. So thank you, and thank the rest of your cheer squad for doing that for us all across the county. And I guess, Mayor, at this time I'd make the motion to approve or accept that the dates provided by the cheerleaders and for the 6 flags that we've traditionally had to do it again for the 21-22 year.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Jeffrey, second by Eric, that we have and encourage the 2022 Morning Cheerleaders Flag Program to the 6 flags at the 6 locations indicated for the price indicated. Any discussion on that motion? Let me throw one out that has come across some discussion somewhere. We've got Labor Day there. Somebody wanted to, do we want to consider something for September 11th? I don't know if you want to consider that or just keep it Labor Day on the 6th.
I could talk to my coach and I could add that in if you'd like me to.
Don't know if that's something the council wants to consider enough. It may, makes a difference to you or not.
I guess maybe a concern on their part would be, would they be doing it just for us only? And maybe that's not a big deal.
I'm not suggesting we have to, just throwing that out to see which dates seem to have more presence in your mind or the minds of your families.
And I'm okay if the coaches and your cheer squad, and if the whole county wants to move to September 11th instead of September 6th, or in addition, I would be fine to do whatever's you're going to do with the entire cheer squad throughout the whole county.
Well, the 6th
Yeah,
is
I can bring that up.
Go ahead, Samantha. Go ahead, Samantha.
Oh, I can bring that up to my coach too. That's a good idea.
Well, I hear the comment. We're not requesting, just maybe discuss it with your coach, your squad, see what seems to make sense with you and maybe with the school And we would like to see either happen that works for you folks.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much for supporting us. Have a great evening.
We we still vote. Oh, I see. We have to go on a motion.
Sorry.
You're fine, Samantha. Let's go with roll call. Eric,
I didn't unmute myself. I'm all in.
Jeff,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Jeffrey, and Tony. Okay, thank you, Samantha.
Thank you
We
so
appre-
much.
Yeah, we appreciate your confidence.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Bye now.
Bye.
Ty, were you gonna say something? Cut you off before a minute ago. Were you gonna say something? Okay, all right. Okay. Denise, anybody sign up for public comments? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, no, we didn't receive any requests.
Okay, thank you. We'll go then to item number 9. Final acceptance Tractor Supply Company. That paper's in your packet as well. Tony may remember, some may remember back when Tractor Supply came in, we had them put the sewer main line down their road heading to the west, but they had then pushed their sewer to State Street. Now that the development is going in behind Tractor Supply, that sewer line has been put through to Island Road now. So there's then to complete that extension that Tractor Supply put in, they now enter into that line. That's another thing, they have completed their requirements. And Mr. Slater's come up and done the inspection. You see the paperwork before you. Tony, since you've done some of these before, I'll let you take it from there and discuss it further if you want, or talk about what the motion really means now for final acceptance.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so obviously this is final acceptance. This means that everything has been I's dotted, T's crossed. So as stated, they recommend the release of the remaining money in the escrow account. $5,794.50. That's for the 10% guarantee. And then there's another $1,031.78 for inspection fees for performing final inspections, preparing the final acceptance letter. $26,826.28. With that having been sent to us by Brent Slater, the city engineer, he recommends this final acceptance. I would make a motion that we do approve of the final acceptance for the Tractor Supply Company as outlined in his letter.
The amount of
$26,826.28.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Tony, second by David, that we grant final acceptance to Tractor Supply Company as outlined by the memo from Brent Slater, and the amount of money to be released would be $26,826.28. Any discussion on that? Any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. Eric?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Jeffrey? And Tony? Okay, motion passed unanimously. Final acceptance has been passed. Okay, go move to item 10 on your agenda. We'll start off first off with city manager reports. And then again, council, keep in mind some reports you may have. We'll hold up for your discussion at the end. So Ty, would you start with your reports?
Sure. Just an update on the Young Street Bridge. While I was on vacation, we got a apply for additional funding for shortfall funding. I had talked to Wasatch Front Regional Council before I left that the opportunity was coming up. And then while I was on vacation, Denise was able to follow up and put together an application for that. On Monday, it's through Congressman Blake Moore's office, so it would be earmarked money directly from the federal government. So I had a conversation with them on Monday and found out that we were narrowed down to the top 5 that they pushed through. And we requested $1.5 million. I think that's in our packet. So that will be requested 1.547 right here. Screen share. So that's exciting. Hopefully it comes through. I don't know about timing or anything of that nature, but because we have a project underway and we have a gap in our funding, and then also the significance of what the bridge is to our community, pretty good chance of receiving that, which would be a huge benefit to that project. Yeah.
Ty, why was there a shortfall, and why would UDOT go ahead not knowing that they had all the money there to do it? Or why would we?
Yeah, so the shortfall is because the grant that we received is capped at 2 million. So this non-urban fund was capped at 2 million, and the entire project is 3.8. That was the engineer's estimate, so it could actually be a little more than that. Our match requirement is only 257,000, so we do have the match, and shortfalls just because it hasn't been identified. You know, the funding, it hasn't been identified yet. So that was our responsibility. That's something we've been working towards. But if we can get this grant, that would be awesome.
So it sounds like we've got a good shot at doing that. But if it didn't happen, is the bridge postponed?
No. Yeah, so if the bridge doesn't happen, then what we've done is, because we did that local option sales tax, that identifies a revenue source that if we need to do a revenue bond for the remaining balance, then we have that in place. And so what we're doing is we're setting money aside and paying as we go. And not until the end of the entire project can be built out. And then if there's a remaining balance that we owe back, we're in a position to be able to bond for that remaining balance. So it basically means that we wouldn't have to take out a loan for the remaining balance, but either way, the project is in a position to move forward and be completed.
Well, a bond would be a loan though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we borrow to do it.
Yeah. And we have the source of revenue identified on that, so, right? So.
Yep, no, great, good answer.
Let me go back to any other questions on that. Just really thank Denise and the mayor for staying on top of that and getting that letter put together. And
looks like, yeah, there was some follow-up with the county and the school district also. That was impressive.
The letter of support from the other entities. And
yes,
part of my phone call was they were asking for other entities that have a letter of support, and I had a chance to reiterate that's pretty much everybody. We have one school district, we've got one county, we're the only incorporated city. So anyway, it was kind of funny. But, I had a request about the splash pad, that our splash pad had not been open on Sundays in the past. I wasn't aware of the hours. And so I just was gonna update the council to let you know that I've extended the same hours that are on Saturday to apply to Sunday as well. It's a self-operated, it has a timer on it, so it automatically shuts off. And as long as the park's open, all of the amenities should probably be open as well.
Is church attendance going to decrease?
To track that with everybody being remote, so. I guess it just depends on if people have waterproof devices or not. So anyway, if you hear anything, really the answer there was just that the question hadn't been asked, at least since I've been here. And since it doesn't require any staff hours or whatnot, it just made sense. And then I did let them know that it'll be open on Sunday, but if we get into water restrictions, those water restrictions would apply across all of the days, not just one of the days. So if we have to do limited hours or something like that, we would potentially just treat every day, you know, the same limited hours if we need to. So we'll see how that goes. There's a couple grants I just want to make you aware of that we've been working on. So one, we have the American Rescue Plan. That was that last round of COVID money, stimulus, good. Yes, thank you. Stimulus, here's a couple pages. I think it's a 2-pager. It just gives you kind of a breakdown of what that is. It does list that infrastructures of one of the things you can use it on, but no criteria yet. So what counts as infrastructure and if it has to be related to COVID or not. We're projected to get $480,000 as a city over 2 years. So we get one payment of $240,000 one year and $240,000 the next year to be spent by 2024. So that's good news. Let me go back to my then also the Wasatch Front Regional Council still has some CARES Act money. We've put a letter of intent for one would be to finish out the train depot. So doing the ADA compliance. It's not necessarily tied to the same CDBG grant requirements, but as close to that as possible. And so just a couple of projects I have, if we get an opportunity for funding, one would be to rehabilitate the train depot and make it usable office space and maybe house the chamber or potential visitors bureau, depending on what the county decides to do. They've been working on some options for economic development. And then the other thing I've been working on is maybe being able to remodel our basement in the city offices. Right now it has the food pantry, but it's not a finished space. It's probably not an ideal location for that. But one thing I've been trying to explore is the potential of maybe bringing the health department to the city offices and give them a local presence. Right now they have a cubicle over at the North Front, thank you, North Front Business Center, and it's not private. It's just an open cubicle. And then we do allow their nurses to use our little conference room here already. And if we have a grant opportunity for that, I think that would also make sense with the COVID impact is having more of a health department presence in our own county, which we don't have now, so that they could meet with people and have whatever office hours. And so I don't have an agreement or anything worked up with them. I just think that might be a good use of our basement. And if we have a grant opportunity to finish that space out downstairs, it would be usable office space into the future. So
that would be something that as we grow, we could reclaim, like, per the agreement, just go from period to period.
Yep. Yeah. But as office space in the short term, we would keep same hours, right? Similar office hours, and it would be more of an office use, which is better use of our elevator and things like that than to require people to right now, loading up a cart full of groceries and using that elevator and then trucking across our tile floor isn't the probably highest and best use of the space that we have. And so anyway, that's kind of just one thing that's going on. Another grant opportunity is DEQ also has extra CARES Act money that they've applied for, and that diffuser system project that we have approved, we've put in for some funding for that to potentially pay for the entire project because it's ready to go. It's been bid out and would have an impact. So DEQ is applying to the state out of the state's portion of money to see if they can get that funded for us. So quite a few grant opportunities to make some good choices here and get some benefit. And then, if you have any of your own ideas or you'd like to follow up, with me individually, feel free to reach out and when I have a actual proposal, of course, it would come to council. I just wanted to kind of let you know what's going on out there money wise. So that was kind of the gist of all of my updates this time, is just bring you up to speed on the grant opportunities that we're currently working on. Yes.
Any questions for Ty while Denise is helping him out? Questions from the council for Ty?
I don't have a question, but I have a statement.
Go ahead.
Hey, very impressive, Ty, on following up on these grants and keeping aware of what's out there. I'm a firm believer in finding some grants to help us out. If we get some of these projects taken care of by a grant, that would be spectacular. So kudos to you, Ty, and staff who's been helping him. So appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Any other question or input for Ty on those items?
Yeah, Ty, they talked a little bit in the league conference about the ARP money, and there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered, but of course, some ours will come through the state, but it sounds like there's not going to be a lot of strings attached. And as I understood it, there were 3 areas that they'd like it focused on: water, sewer, and broadband. Any thoughts yet on where we'd go with ours?
Yeah, so I'd like to continue our broadband. So we spent all of our CARES Act money. Just as another update, that'll be part of the kind of amended budget process. 1st of May is a little update there on the CARES Act money, and I feel like we spend it appropriately. So there's some other pending expenses on broadband, running fiber to all of our locations. So, I think continuing that effort would be good. And then updating an entire SCADA system. Oh, I skipped that. It's right up here. So our SCADA system would be another really good investment where we could operate all of our utilities off of a controlling system. And like you said, the parameters are pretty open, but that's where I want a little bit of clarification on infrastructure, if that includes the controllers and the remote access, remote work that way. And then the nice thing is because it's to 2024, we have some time to map out a few things.
Think about it, yeah.
Yeah, make some decisions where the CARES Act money came fast, and we had to make some quick decisions, and the deadline was December 31st before they extended it. So they made the rules up as they went. So that was a really challenging, we didn't even know if we were going to get the 3rd tranche until they said, you're getting the 3rd tranche in November. And by the way, it's got to be spent by December, which we did. It was fast and furious there for a couple of months, but I would have really liked to have had more time to discuss some options, put some proposals together as a council. And so that's what I anticipate, is just seeing what those parameters are, looking at the available dollars, and then but right off the top of my head, I think just continuing on with what we've started with running fiber to our locations, adding access points for our employees to be able to access the network remotely throughout the city. Adding cameras on our internal system and then a SCADA system to whatever, so we can control the sprinklers at the parks, the cemeteries, the water. We can monitor, but also control those things remotely instead of drive out every time. I know our sewer guy right now is pretty tired of wondering every time something alarms if it's an actual emergency or not, because they've had some sensors go bad, but they just have to.
He's running down there.
Yeah, and we're trying to make it so they can, get the alarm, look at it on camera, and, do what they need to from home. So that's kind of the direction we're headed.
Good.
One other update that I had forgot about, but we just bought into a new system for our cemeteries that'll allow it to be GIS. So it'll transition into GIS and it'll be web-based. So we'll be able to see that on our website. So we've had an electronic program for that, but hasn't really been accessible to the public like it will be in the future. So we've signed up for that and look forward to that little upgrade as well.
When we say GIS, that allows accuracy and digging where you need to dig.
Yep, correct. So it's just like our parcel data for the cemeteries. It'll be in our city system, and you can find your relatives and navigate our cemeteries remotely before you show up. So very popular with the genealogists and people that are, doing that remotely.
Yeah.
So.
Any further questions for Ty?
Well, Mayor, while we're kind of
Go ahead.
to be the League of City and Towns, down there talking about all of the different options for federal money, the money's coming in. You could tell everybody was hitting the face with a fire hose. Nobody, we don't have a parameter. It's coming. What are you going to do with it? I had the chance to go to a rural meeting and I sat by a guy from Bear River City and a guy from Eureka. They were dying. They said, we've missed so much money. They don't have a tie. They don't have a city. I'm just grateful we've got somebody that can track that, because if we didn't have somebody that could keep a finger on that, we've let way too much in the past fall through our hands. And thank you, Ty, for catching what's coming down the line, because a lot of those rural cities were saying, time we know we can apply, we've missed the deadline, and it's just somebody that can bird dog all of this. So again, thank you, Ty, and like I say, learned from that we're in a pretty good spot. It's on a swivel to make sure we don't miss what could be coming down the line next. So
Appreciate that. Any further updates from the ULCT conference, Jeffrey or Tony or David that went, and updates you have?
What more interesting conversations I had was Friday. I bumped into one of the council members from Heber City, and we had a pretty lengthy discussion. And of course, we all know what Heber City's happened to Heber City in the last, several years. I can remember when I was in high school, Heber City was about the size of, a little bigger than Morgan, but not much bigger than Morgan. Now it's a 5A school up there, and they've had some incredible growth. The thing I was, I think, grateful for after that discussion with that gentleman was we discussed we talked about the vision for the future. What do we want our city to look like? What's people going to say 20 years from now concerning what decisions we made? And he talked about some of some of the trials they've had, some of the mistakes they've made. But I was also very grateful at the end of the discussion that we had elected to go ahead and put together a general plan this year, update our general plan, and which is going to help guide us in the future as to how our city's going to look and how it's going to grow and develop. So, yeah, I was obviously pretty thrilled that we're working on our general plan and how important that's going to be to us. Then quickly, one other one, I don't know if anybody was in the one on water. Anybody happen to sit in on that one? And they had the five conservancy districts in the state represented there. Of course, Tage Flint from Weber Basin Water was there. And it was interesting. Water, of course, obviously is a huge issue. But there was one city, and I forget the city exactly which city it was, that had put together like a kind of an advisory board as far as future water use was concerned, which actually made recommendations to the city concerning the many things, I guess, lot size and the percentage of lot that should be in green space, and just made recommendations to the city concerning how they might conserve water in the future. And I thought, that maybe that's not a real bad idea if you could get, some of our citizens involved in that. But anyway, water, as you know, is going to be it's a huge issue. And every time I drive down to St. George, I think to myself, where are they getting all their water from anyway down here? Because that place, you don't see any snow on mountains down there. So you kind of think, okay, where's all this water coming from? But it was an interesting conversation.
Anything else? Jeffrey or David from ULCT?
Yeah, maybe Ty, did you ever hear why we had trouble getting signed in? I mean, we spent a good part of the first day not having access to what we wanted, or at least I didn't, to what I wanted to listen to.
Yeah, not everybody has good internet.
Yeah.
It wasn't our internet on our side, but they did host out at Tuacahn, which is a very, it was awesome. It was a good, cool morning. The opening ceremonies and that first speaker, I thought, was amazing and set the tone for the conference just as well as the governor ended it, on a tone of working with people from all kinds of opinions. And so I think that out at Tuacahn, it was just the internet
Just
capacity.
service, huh?
Yep, and then they recorded it, and then I guess that they got it to work.
Maybe in your next league meeting there, suggest they send somebody down a day before and try it.
Live performances, not stream.
They what?
They're known for their live performances. I don't think they've ever had a need to stream their.
Yeah.
In fact, I think they frown on that from their Broadway quality shows. So.
So the moral is be in person next time.
We're trying to get, right now, they're talking to Utopia about getting Utopia in St. George. But for our hotel book for my, free weekend away. And it took me, it wasn't loaded by the next morning. It started at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and it wasn't downloaded by the next morning. And so that just tells you how far advanced Morgan is of every other city out there, because it's just horrible. Broadband down there is just absolutely horrible. So
I just let them know we'll be happy to host the next conference.
Yeah, with
A hotel.
54 hotel rooms.
Yeah. This will be the center right here, the nerve center right here.
Bring a tent.
Yeah.
I can't remember which breakout session it was, but Jeffrey was there. I gave a testimonial to how grateful I was that we had elected to go with fiber. When we did, I said, I can't even imagine the last year having Zoom meetings, city council planning meetings, ecclesiastic meeting. I can't even imagine trying to do that with the CenturyLink I had prior to Utopia. So, yeah, I sort of I guess I made an advertisement for Utopia down there, but anyway, I'm certainly was glad we've had it the last year.
I had another comment just from one of the sessions I attended was on internal accessory dwelling units. So that's was approved, and we have to go through a process that if we want to preserve 25% of our city where this would not apply, we need to do that. I can't see any reason or any fair way of doing that. It is what it is. So anything that's attached or internal to a home, you would be able to create a accessory dwelling unit and rent that out. You do have to be an owner occupant. So you can't make a duplex and rent two sides of a home out. You have to have it as your primary residence. And then the only other requirement is that you can require one parking stall for that second unit. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. One of the big things I learned is that HOAs are even bound to that law. So HOAs are not allowed to regulate internal accessory dwelling units.
Is that right? Wow.
Which sounds like a heavy step when those are contractual agreements with the people that move in there. So that'll probably get sorted out in some legal battles along the way. But my feeling is that if an HOA is not even allowed to regulate it, why we would try to regulate it in 25% of our city. Other discussions is we can require a business license. So that's something we need to talk about, in some future meetings. They said, so cities can receive the revenue of a business license, but to me, there's no point in, not as a revenue stream, but the main value is just having some that are legal, and that we can recognize and know where they're at. If that would be the advantage of having that process. So instead of how do we regulate it? It's more of how do we offer that service to those that want to do it legally, and make sure that they have that they've provided that parking space and that there's no ramifications to them, or have an issue with a future tenant where we can say, yeah, we know that that's what they're doing, and that sort of thing. So it was interesting. It just more discussion yet to come. So
I think we honor our mayor and exempt his street. It woke him up. Hey, Ty, just while we're talking just for a minute, it appears your microphones there are very directional. If somebody turns to the side, there's some cutting out. I don't know if those can be adjusted or if they could be changed to be a little more, to provide a little bit more coverage.
that's good to know.
Yeah, you have to talk almost right in front of it in order to get reception.
Those that are using them, that's the case. We really don't hear ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, even right now, you were cutting out a little bit. So maybe there's a distance factor too. I'm not sure.
Well, and I think it's so that the microphones don't interfere with each other.
Sure. Well, that means on our part, maybe we need to be right in front of them
Okay.
for down the road.
Okay, any other updates from the council or question on any other topics? Jeffrey? Tony?
I'd just like to point out that I didn't send any vendors after Ty this time, so any phone call.
You did come home with a bag of goodies, though.
Yeah.
David, anything else?
Just we don't need to go into detail, Ty, but Denise sent out the accountant report for March 31st, but there were 4 funds, the general, water, sewer, and electric, that had some component of a budget, overspend or shortfall and requiring an amendment. But any concerns on any of that? You imagine you've had a chance to look at it?
No, so planning those for quite a while. It's just by process amended budget. So it's included in the amended budget. It doesn't.
I'm only getting about half your comments there, Ty. Is that?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's not picking it up, but we're losing a lot of it, Ty.
My microphone's getting tired. Let me switch. Can you hear me now?
Sing. Yeah, would you do a musical number for us?
Yeah, only if it sketches out.
Yeah.
Only for part of it. But yeah, so we've been tracking that for quite a while. I only do one budget amendment at the end of the year, which will be the first meeting in May. And I just do that so I can also estimate the differences in revenues that are coming in on all of those funds. And I've been working on that over the last 2 weeks, and I don't see anything that will change our position. It's basically just a couple of line items that, you reduce a couple of line items that we didn't need and increase them where we overspent. And so I don't have any concerns. It's just a matter of process. You can update or you can amend a budget as many times as you want, but it's also, to me, just as easy to do it one time at the capture it all.
That makes sense. Just wanted to make sure we didn't have shortfalls big enough we couldn't cover.
Yeah, sure. No,
we're at it down the road.
Yeah, the big concern is still just the water fund. So that's something that we need to look at rates, but we're also the overage on that was also to get all of our meters fixed so that the meters are reading and we're billing for overages that we hadn't been in the past. And there's some agreements also that will help the water fund that we need to get cleaned up before we adjust the water rate. But you could see in the report where future impact fees are going to apply to that deficit that we have from that water project is where we're at. But
you one time talked about a review of rates. If you haven't started that, when would you anticipate that?
We probably need to start that just right at the first of the new budget year.
Fiscal year.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'd like to get other things fixed first before we jump right into the rate, just so we don't overdo the rate. When there's other operational things that can be cleaned up first. So
makes sense. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks for reading that.
I had a hard time going to sleep last night, so I thought, well, what can I look at? Hey, look at what Denise just sent.
Reading material.
Yep.
Jeff or Eric? Eric?
Nothing from me.
Jeff? Good, Jeff? Okay, Ty, you said you had something else?
Denise has one more update.
Okay, Denise.
Opportunity to remind her of something, since she always reminds me.
Yeah, thanks. So Ty asked me to do an update on the election to make sure you guys are aware of whose positions are up this year. Eric, Jeffrey, and Dave all need to come in and get your declaration of candidacy packet. Also, the mayor's position is up. The packets will be ready in the city office the first week in May, and then they need to be turned in during the week of, the filing period is June 1st through Monday, June 7th. And the office will be open every day from 8 till 5 to receive those. So
Denise, whose terms corresponded to which years? I think there were 2, 4, and 1, 2 on the council.
Eric and Jeffrey will be 4-year terms. Dave, yours is a 2-year term.
And that would be just coming to the election to complete the rest of the original term.
Well, yes, Gary, I wanted to ask, could Dave, if he ran, can he run for a 4-year term? Because it's just the position, not the person.
Is the term that Dave was appointed to, does that terminate in 2 years, right?
Yes.
So he would need to run for the remainder of that term.
So he would run, if he ran, he would run for the 2-year term. Okay.
And I think that probably keeps the staggering component intact then, wouldn't it?
It does.
Okay. I figured that the case, just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Denise, for
Yep.
putting it out. Okay, appreciate that. Ty, anything else? Gary, do you have any updates for us from the league or other things you want to present tonight?
We're still working on 98, the bill that deals specifically with design standards. It looks like it will be back in the special session with the changes that FEMA has requested, but it doesn't include any changes to what we have already when it comes to design standards. The time periods are still the same. Nothing has changed there. Regarding ADUs, we're starting to get companies that are actually specializes in funding the creation of an ADU in your basement. So banks, I don't know if they're banks or whatever they were, but we got one from Bountiful. They're called the ADU specialists. And what they're doing is they're taking advantage of you remember at the end of that bill, there was funding for putting an ADU in your home. There's backing for there's backing for a loan that you would get to put an ADU in your home for that. And so these guys have jumped on the bandwagon already and they're out there advertising.
You say it doesn't take long, does it?
No.
The ink's not even dry.
Right. And then there's another provision too that we're going to try and get on. And there's a 10-year provision that says that any subdivision, once it's approved, they have a 10-year leeway where nothing can change. The law can't change regarding anything once they receive, they're recorded. And even the developers are upset about that. It was put in there inadvertently. And so in the special session, which I can't remember the exact day at the end of the month, but it's at the very end of the month of May, we're going to go ahead and try and take that provision out because that would mean that it would bind your hands as far as zoning decisions or ordinance decisions for 10 years on a subdivision. And that doesn't make any sense. So
You don't know why it was put in there or what the original intent, the author's original intent was maybe?
Yes, I do. It was because Perry subdivision, they had a subdivision with 7 phases and somebody on the council decided that after the 3rd phase that they wanted to put in an all brick requirement in their jurisdiction.
Okay.
And so that changed the price of every home in the remaining 4 phases. This is always, it's always some bad situation that happened out there that causes these things. And so what they did was they put into place this provision saying that once you get final approval on your phase, they can't change the law on you like that. And there's another way of fixing it. And we've kind of put together another fix that is not severe. It's just it's a good fix. So anyway,
Interesting that we line up with the developers.
That doesn't happen often.
Yeah, for once.
So. Okay, anything else, Gary? Okay. I guess I'd like to ask if when we come back in from recess to our work session, Mary, to see if you want to give any direction or your current thoughts on annexation and a procedure for extending services outside the city. Any thoughts on that? We can entertain your direction on that, or we can wait till give you some time to think about it and have that agenda on the next meeting if you want more time to think about. We kind of need to give Ty a direction or us to think about and talk about our thoughts in the future of per people outside the city requesting services, and at what point do we want to request annexation versus just extending services. So that'd be the purpose to come back in to close recess, come back into the work session for a couple minutes. I'd entertain a motion to close recess, come back into work session.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Moved by Jeffrey and seconded by Tony that we come back in, that we end the recess, come back into the work session. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? Eric?
Aye.
Jeff? David?
Aye.
Jeffrey?
Aye.
Tony? Okay. Basically, the question then is, if as a council, you have some direction or thoughts on a future procedure and process for someone requesting utilities outside the city. If I put together a suggested proposal, or excuse me, a policy for that, and or if you want to consider what we want to do as far as future annexation. If we want to take a time to look at our annexation declaration, we want to try and change that, add to that, what your thoughts are as far as annexation question. So I'll take some thoughts now on that, or just a proposal to put on the next agenda and give you some time to think about it. What are your thoughts?
In our discussion there, Gary, you mentioned it may be well to come up with an agreement that we could use for not only perhaps now, but down the road. That seemed to resonate or strike a bell. Maybe talk just a little bit about what that could look like.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the recommendation would be that the city come up with a policy regarding exterior water connections. And that can certainly, when you've got an annexation, you would have an annexation agreement, which would put into play all of the things that the city would require when you're actually annexing. But there should also be a policy for those connections that you have outside of the city that aren't going to annex, that are just out there requesting water. And I don't know what that would be. Well, I can give you some recommendations of what it would be, but like tonight, there were two different situations on the agenda. One looked like it was being serviced with utilities from the city and looked like the very type of thing that the city would say, those types of developments where they're already being serviced by utilities, et cetera, should annex into the city boundaries and comply with all city ordinances. On the other side of the table, you had a situation where you've got a kind of a leapfrog development out there in the county. And so it would be good to have a set of rules for new development. And I know that there's a lot of homes out there that have requested service where we have extended, not a lot, but we've got a few where we've extended service to existing homes. And so maybe the policy is, what are we going to require for new development, and what are we going to require when it comes to existing homes that need water? If a well goes dry or something of that nature and somebody needs water. And so just a set of rules as to when you're going to extend water and then what you should charge them. You know, if you do extend water, for example, I think that if you extend water service to any new development, that it ought to pay the same price that it would if it was coming in. It should pay
Sure.
the impact fee amount,
Yeah.
at least. Yeah, at
Yep.
least.
You know, I
That's
think,
just one example.
I think maybe to be incorporated also, I think Tony had the thought or the idea, and Gary, you mentioned that it could probably be again by agreement that if there were a one-off that said, here's water, but if sewer comes your way, it's a part of a recording that goes with the land, you're required to hook on to the city sewer. Maybe that could be in one of these, in a policy similarly. Let's talk then, to go down a road like that with policy, that would take some time to put together. Would these two requests tonight need to be part of that, or would we move forward with these and then set a policy thereafter? I'd throw that out to anybody. Maybe Ray, your thoughts on that?
The procedure, put together policy can be a lengthy process, I think.
Yeah.
I think we take a look at these two. I think if they come in and talk with staff, with Ty, I feel comfortable with their demeanor and with the staff and Ty's thoughts. I think they'll come up with something that's going to be workable for us.
Mhm.
I don't think we hold those two up. In fact, if they apply for a full-blown accurate petition, we can't pull them off.
Mhm.
So I think we proceed with them working with staff and Ty. And either we can accept, reject, or we can deny or accept those.
Sure.
I think the policy, we still ought to take a look at putting that together, what we want in the future. And maybe the thing that Ty and staff works out with them as far as the annexation and the policy, that may direct and guide our policy as well.
Mhm. Gary, would you have resources that you could work with? Would Layton have similar arrangements, or comparable to what we're trying to accomplish?
We do have an extraterritorial water and sewer provision in our code in Layton. And then I'm sure that there are a lot of cities like Morgan too, that probably have at least some type of guidelines as to when they will provide service and when they won't. So you want to encourage people to annex, because cities are really the best place to provide service, and you don't want a whole bunch of septic tanks out there that you're going to have to inherit. I remember just recently not recently, but and Ty's probably more familiar than I am with this, but in Roosevelt, there was a jurisdiction that had 56 homes on septic tanks, and the drain field or septic field failed. And so the state had to spot them somewhere around $6 million to extend Roosevelt's sewer system out to, the subdivision. So the county really doesn't want to develop lots. They're not in the business of developing and providing. It's a city that provides the service. And so we just need to determine the terms that we want to use to be able to do that. So it doesn't cost the city every time
Sure.
we have somebody hook on. And now it's going to cost the city for an 8-inch line out to that location in the future, and for the sewer line and everything else. So
I mean, that's a great example. And I was trying to come up with, just in my own mind, why that was a concern. But something like that, for that many homes, those costs should have been borne by the developer, hence ultimately the homeowners. It should have been part of the cost of the home to begin with.
he was long gone.
Yeah.
He left.
I guess my thought is, it seems that tonight it seemed that Mr. Durant, Ernie, and the Wilkinsons were fairly amicable toward an annexation. And that's why I asked the question, could it be one of those unilateral annexations? So to me, I'd hate to, it almost makes sense to me. I don't know how long a unilateral annexation would take. What sort of time frame would we be looking at, Gary?
Unilateral would be, it requires a resolution and then I think it's a 30-day time period. I better look it up, but I had it just a second ago. I'm sorry, Tony.
But I
But,
mean, if that, I know Ernie wants to build a home. I know that. But if we could somehow get that annexed, and still allow Ernie to get his home built this summer. I mean, to me, that would be the best of both worlds up on that end of 100 South. But again, I don't know what the time frame would be.
I'll look it up for you here. Just,
Other questions, comments, or thoughts?
So I just have a thought, and Gary, correct me if this is flawed thinking, but I'd rather annex and provide limited services than to not annex and provide any limited services, if that makes sense. So at the point the sewer is available, if they're annexed, there's a lot more within our control about how that happens than continuing to extend our water service into the county or our power into the county, and then hoping that comes together at some point, because once you annex, you can take care of roads and as many things as you can, but then it becomes our kind of our option, right? If we require sewer at that point or not. So anyway, and then my other question or comment is, and I think a lot of what Gary was talking about as far as like checking with the neighbors, if it has to be 100% of the people to sign off, at some point, somebody can throw a roadblock for a future annexation. So, that leapfrog idea is if there's a couple of residents in between a future annexation and they all say no, I'm not sure how that plays out if they hold all the cards or not. So those are just my two thoughts from our discussion that I'm still kind of
I think that might be a good reason to have our policy in place that if there were a holdout, boy, we can't help because here's a policy which we're following. And then secondly, that conditions can change. Maybe a year later, the holdout says, "Oh yeah, I see the light. Let's move forward with it," or a new person moves in or whatever. So I think to have a policy that says, yeah, we can move forward if, as per our policy, then everybody understands and we know ahead of time. There's just more transparency. And then we, just like you say, Ty, we don't have to make the one-off decisions, perhaps. And I think, Gary, you brought up the fact that, you make this one and you make that one, and now all of a sudden you can't make the third one. Well, who's the bad guy here? Because of a line or it's not big enough or whatever.
Any further question, any further input?
it is 30 days from the date of the resolution. So you do a resolution and then there's a 30-day period of time. And there's an advertisement in a newspaper of general circulation. I think that changes because they took all of those out, but for 3 weeks, and then you have a public hearing and actually annex it at that public hearing. Everything else goes the same way that a normal annexation does. The ordinance is passed by you, and then it's sent to the lieutenant governor's office along with the plat.
You have to have it all surveyed.
It does. Sorry if that helps.
Yeah. So Mayor, what's the next step for us then?
Yes, that's what I'm asking tonight. What do you perceive the next step is? Do you want, I guess you can present that tonight? Or you can just ask for this item to be on the next agenda for further discussion. We can ask Ty and Gary to give us some thought back or a rough draft back. Or I guess you can, those are some options. What does the council prefer? Or you can just take it case by one case at a time, case by case, not worry about a protocol.
So
Ty,
either one of these officially petitioned?
They put, well, in your packet, there's some petitions, but the word officials, Denise helped me out, they're not totally completed.
No.
They both fill out started their petition, but they're not fully, completely filled out. Is that correct, Denise?
Yeah, neither one of those petitions are a correct petition. One of them doesn't have the fees in them because we were in the process of changing the tapping fees. And the size of the line that they listed in there was the size that Terry Lawrence was putting. They didn't get with Chad and get the proper size of the lines and everything that would need to be done. So neither one of those petitions are good.
They're complete. They start them, they're not complete.
They would have to start over.
I think, Mayor, my recommendation would be is they come in and meet with staff and with Ty to steer them, if we can, toward the annexation process. You know, to get them into the city, to get the utilities we can right now and have that in place for the future. So that's where I would hope that the staff and Ty would drive them. So that's my 2 cents.
so
I
here's
think
a-
I'd agree with Jeffrey on that one. Let's, I can see the need for a policy. I don't think we should kick that can down the road any further. But I think we work on it, work with them and see if going through this process will help us get to where we need to be in the future.
If they officially petitioned, we are obligated to act on it.
Act on it.
To accept the petition.
Or not.
Or reject it.
Sorry, Tony, I didn't hear what you said.
But my question was, I said, if they file an official petition, we have to act on it. We have to make a decision.
Within 14 days or the next closest meeting to 14 days after the filing of the petition, you have to either accept or reject it. And Denise would probably certify it at that same time.
Ty, here's a thought. I mean, in your discussion with the two requests there, could we take an approach that would say, assuming these were annexed, here are the improvements that would need to be made? And make those a requirement, even though they're not annexed?
Yeah, you could. I would policy that says we don't extend services.
You were
without
cutting
annex-
out. Say that over.
I would rather make a policy or an approach that is, we don't extend services without annexation and make, if annexation is either possible, then that's what dictates whether we extend the services instead of the other way where we say, yeah, we'll give you services and then try and make some arbitrary hope for the future. It kind of puts the ball back in their court. It keeps everything within the city boundaries and then we have, as part of that process, we can make an annexation agreement that we, we can say, here's the trigger points at what point you're gonna need to connect or whatever. But that's the point where we can say, the roads, the curb gutter sidewalk, the utility easement, it's just kind of everything to our standard at that point.
That's, I agree with that, Ty.
Okay,
I have another question. So on our annexation declaration, if it touches one of the properties, but it doesn't encompass the entire parcel, is that considered included in our declaration? Because the declaration doesn't follow parcel boundaries, much like zoning doesn't.
And the answer is it would be treated exactly the same as a zoning or general plan map. So
If it touches, it's in,
it would be fine.
okay. Well, that helps on John Cannon's proposal. Well, some of them are a couple, I don't know if all of the lots are on that declaration or not, but it basically just be if he can get through that annexation process with the neighbors. He says he has water service, but it's not a main line, it's a lateral, so it's not really the city's water line, I don't think, that goes.
The one that he said he has to move isn't the city's.
I don't believe so. I think that that's a lateral all on their property. That's why it's not in an easement out front.
That'd make sense.
Well, here's a little provision I added for Davis County when they were looking at turning all of their zones into 20-acre zones to try and get rid of septic tanks. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to be able to provide for ultimately those areas within your annexation policy declaration area are going to come into the city, like Ty says, eventually anyway. So what I did was I took away the contiguity requirement. When I say we last year at the legislature took away the contiguity requirement for certain annexation situations. And if you go to annexation limitations in the code, it says a municipality may annex an unincorporated area within a specified county, and we are a specified county because it's everything except first-class counties, that does not meet the requirements of 1B, which is the contiguity and the all the other stuff. It says leaving or creating an unincorporated island or unincorporated peninsula, which John Cannon's property would, because essentially you have a road, you'd annex the road and you'd annex his property is what you'd annex into your boundaries. I'm just telling you that you could do it this way. Then it says that you can do it if the area is within the annexing municipality's expansion area. And so if you interpret it that way, as touching in that area, you can do it. Tick off the first one. Second one is the specified county in which the area is located and the annexing municipality agree to the annexation. So you got the county and the city agreeing to the annexation by resolution probably. And the area is not within the area of another municipality's annexation. You don't have that problem here. We're the only one in the county, so we're okay there. And then the last thing is the annexation is for the purpose of providing municipal services to the area. So that still exists in the code right now. And I think they left that in there. I'm pretty sure they left that in there, as of May 7th. But that would allow, I'm just saying that if you wanted to, that would allow somebody like John Cannon to petition. And then as long as the neck, the cherry stem, and the property we're all in agreement, county, property owner, and us, he could potentially annex without putting pressure on those other property owners. But if he's within that annexation policy declaration area,
So Gary, normally that would be considered an island with the exception of your cherry stem.
the language.
Cherry stem language.
Yeah.
And you expect that to still be in place in a couple of
I'm
weeks.
thinking I don't think they changed it.
Okay.
I think they still kept that in place. The only reason I say it might not be was because there was a big lawsuit. Hideout went all the way around Jordanelle Reservoir and took a great big piece of property on the far side of Jordanelle Reservoir, and then the road all the way around. And so that kind of ticked Summit County and Wasatch County off. So they were up there trying to lobby, and I don't know what they ended up with. So as of May 7th, I can tell you with more certainty whether that piece is still in there.
But then if that, does that include the road, that the county road then that would be annexed also?
Yeah,
And it would
Yeah,
have to be contiguous with our road.
that would have to be a decision we would make. Do we want to annex all the way up the county road and into that?
Mhm.
It's a mess. I'd say don't even talk about this section.
The nice thing about the Canon proposal is it's on a state highway, which is maintained by the state.
Regardless.
As far as annexation, I think he would get cooperation from property owners across the road instead of which would alleviate the, right, like it would, and that's actually the area that would need the sewer and future developments to come through. So I think there might be some
Would,
that
so
direction.
here's a question though. Would those property owners also request service? They would also request water service? If we do it on the one side, why wouldn't we do it on the other?
Yeah, eventually, yeah. Some of them already have water, but as far as the new annexation, it's for future development. So there's no time frame that says you have to connect right away, but I think they would be interested in the annexation process now, and then request for services is on their own time frame. But once they're in the city, it's all within our purview and makes it clean.
So that annexation would just include the two homes that John wants to do and then the homes across the street. Is that fair?
It could, yeah. We could look at the actual boundaries and where the water line currently is. But I mean,
Do you have enough direction, Ty, from our discussion here to talk with them? Do you feel comfortable in meeting with them at this point?
yeah, yeah. I think we can work something out. We can just go see. What I gather is that there's enough interest in, we've never had this discussion since I've been here, but the discussion I hear is that we are open to the idea of annexation in principle.
Mhm.
Oh, for sure.
Well, and it's like, as Gary says, that it's done properly so that the city isn't left with an expense down the road is the biggest, I think it's the concern. That's why we do it. So
Yeah.
again, those expenses need to be paid for by the development, which ultimately reflects in the price of the home. So it ends up being paid for by the person buying the home, which that's fair. They're the ones getting the service.
Yeah, and our rate structure and everything else is based on being in a city zoning, right? So you annex, you get the zones with higher densities that pay for the infrastructure and actually make the sewer flow. So it makes sense to me to do the annexation, and whenever that development happens, at least it's planned for, instead of just extending services out for a couple of homes and then hope that their rate pays for future impacts, because it's just too much up in the air at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So Ray, if it sounds like maybe the direction would be to have Ty meet with them, but could we also ask Gary to start looking into a policy?
Yeah, I think you do both. I think we want to proceed
Yeah.
with these two, proceed with Ty and staff, proceed with these two. I think Ty's got the direction. We're in favor of annexation. We hadn't given that direction before. And yeah, I think then along the way, we use these two to help us develop a policy and or have Gary give us some input on a policy, and we work on the policy in later meetings.
Okay.
That's what I've summarized from what I've heard tonight. I got a shake from Jeffrey. Head thumb up from Eric. Okay, thumbs up from David and Jeff. Okay. Any further discussion on this or anything else? If not, I'm ready to adjourn. Seeing none, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate everybody being here, helping us out. Appreciate you input your thoughts. If you have any other thoughts, please, extend them to Ty.